let's talk some news. And to be honest, there's only one big thing in the news for me right now, especially for the military, is this guy. And I gotta say, it's been a slow news week, and then this happened. This guy, who was in trouble with the South Korean government because he was doing crimes, and then was being sent back to America so that he could be processed out, but instead he like escaped his handlers in the airport and fucking defected to North Korea. Insane. We haven't had anything like this happen in decades. It is kind of crazy. And also gotta hand it to him. Not I I too have not wanted to face the music on many occasions. I've never gone this far with it. So we'll see how this works for him. Now, in the past, it's worked out pretty great for other defectors. There's James Joseph Dresnok is one of the big famous ones who defected to North Korea during the Korean War. Sorry, after the Korean War, but in between Korea and Vietnam. So 1962 is when he defected. So this guy also, and this guy, we're gonna give him, we're gonna give James a little in the beginning. I'm gonna give him a little slack because he came from a bad background. He had a he did not have a stable home life, and even when he was put into the house of responsible people, still not a great home life for him. So he joined the military because he was like, this is the only chance that I have. And you know what? I always tell people don't join the army, but with this guy, maybe it was going to work. However, um, I guess don't listen to me. If I convince you to join the military and defect to North Korea, I wouldn't do it at all. There's absolutely no way to tell what is going to happen to this guy. Um, but we'll see. But I do want to talk about James because while with King we don't really know anything yet. This says that there's no new talks. Some sources say there are talks going on. I mean, there's conversations I'm sure happening somewhere. This kid has really fucked up some weekends. I'm going to tell you though. But James had a bad family life in the beginning, and you know he he got married too young, and his wife started cheating on him when he was sent to Germany. So he got divorced and had nothing else to do. So he reenlisted, got sent out to South Korea. While out there, he's just like, well, there's absolutely nothing for me. I am, you know, there's nothing that I can do. Uh, so he just starts spending all his money on prostitutes and drinking. I feel you. However, he was getting kicked out because he forged his sergeant's name on a pass. So he was going to get court-martialed, but they were really close to the border. And this guy ran across a fucking minefield. Like King went across the cute little border, like, oh, there's North Korea. It's right over there. You can throw a penny and hit it or whatever. This guy James went across a minefield, so a lot of balls on him. But ran across that minefield, got captured, and then had to go live with other defectors. There were like four other people who had defected from the army. They all kind of lived together in a TikTok house, but for like Pyongyang propaganda. So they all lived together. And this is I love this too. So James was in a movie. He was in a lot of propaganda. They all were in a lot of propaganda movies. But one of them is a series called Unsung Heroes, and he plays an American villain called Arthur Cockstud, Cockstud, and he became a celebrity in the country because of fucking Cockstud. People would come up and be like, "Oh, it's Arthur." Um, Not a joke. People did that. He got married while he was there to a woman against her will, though we're gonna say, because at the time they didn't, the Koreans didn't want these guys having kids with ethnic Koreans. So like we love you guys for your propaganda, but we don't want you dirtying up the pure Korean blood up here. so they would like kidnap women from other countries, and so his wife was kidnapped. They had a couple of kids together. She was Romanian-born Japanese heritage, and she got tricked up into Pyongyang at the time, and then was not allowed to leave. Again, this is the 1960s, 70s, like North Korea. I don't know. I don't know much about North Korea. I will be 100% honest with you because I don't know what propaganda to listen to or not because there's propaganda coming from both sides. North Korea's got it, America's got it. The weird mannequin wax lady with the giant tits on Joe Rogan, propaganda there. I don't know what's going on. Uh, and I never will assume to. So I don't know if at the time it was one of those like, well, the fuck did you expect to happen? But maybe they hadn't, North Korea hadn't hit their kidnapping comfort women for our defector Americans so they don't fuck up our bloodline era. So James led a normal life. He had jobs there. He's got biography. I might read it. I don't know. It does sound interesting though. But he was 100% Juche from head to toe. Like even in death, which is like fuck yeah, North Korea. My kids will stay loyal to the Kim family. And while I disagree with it politically, but I gotta say, points on eventually having some, finding some stability and having that, that rock that we all need, and that rock is Juche people. Be sure to uh, to worship a North Korean dictator as though he's God, I suppose. Um, so King, I hope you come back, man. Like it's not going to be better. Like you made it a lot worse. I hope that you know that. I don't know if this is what he thought it would be. Don't know what he's going through. I know there's a lot of people who have that like, oh well, fuck him. He ran across. It's on him. You can't leave him. Like you can't even our dipshits, man. We can't do that. We can't leave him to get fucked up by was ostensibly the enemy. So there's a good chance King is having some enhanced interrogation happening against him. But also, he's just a dumbass private. Like he doesn't know anything. They're not going to get anything out of him. They have maybe a propaganda piece. That's about it out of this. So we'll see. As of recording, here on the 24th of July. I don't know. Godspeed though, man. Good luck. So, what I'm going to be reading to you from today is a publication called Your Military Left out of Kelly Air Force Base. This is one of the nicer zines that I've seen during the Vietnam era. The quality really ranges. Some of them you can tell are scans of like something that somebody just typed out and then stapled together, which kind of like ups like kind of a crazy level to it. Like, here's my manifesto, Sergeant. That it's a little off-putting. But some of them, this one, and a few others that I was looking at today also had advertisements in them. Some of these kind of alt newspapers, some of them were bigger and more national and had a lot of subscribers than others. Some of them were just small things on a base because that's what they were able to do. Or somebody would get a hold of some of these bigger publications and they would be inspired to start their own movements and so on and so forth. So your military left is one that has a lot of it's got a lot of issues that are scanned in. They look really good. They've got like comic sections and everything. They have a Dear Abby kind of area that's a play on. I don't know exactly like how much my listeners know about various pop culture. Dear Abby is a person that you write into with your problems about like how I don't know your husband likes high heels now or something, and then Abby tells you no, that's fine, it's okay. Abby is like a pen name. They have various people that write for it, but it's before we could go onto Quora or before we could ask Reddit. We had to Dear Abby, so they have kind of a section for that. It's really great. Some really great stuff. So this one, the first one we're going to read is a quick article called Discharge. Kelly Air Force Base, June 11th. George Edge, staffer of your military left, has been undesirably discharged for, quote, the good of the Air Force, end quote. The court-martial charges of fomenting disloyalty and soliciting troops to desert have been dropped. Although George considers the charges a high honor, he says it's good to be out of the Air Force system and instead be just a member of the sick American society. Quote, I can only take one pathological system at a time, end quote. George plans to continue his activities after discharge. One of the guys here, one of the staffers for this plane, and I want to say that they have people from all over the place. We're also going to be reading from the same publication, but it's written by a Coastie. So there were a lot of people who were getting involved in these subversive zines because they were draftees. Like, you don't have that anymore because we have a all volunteer army. Like, if you're unhappy, fucking leave. Like, do your 4 years or whatever. But like, nobody forced you to do this. You should have done a little bit of background searching to know that the army sucks or whatever. So these mostly draftees that are writing these things, who are noticing, like, every time I hear about bring back the draft, I think about these the stories that I read, and we'll get into more of them with regard to prison riots and stuff, because people would just be like, most military bases at the time, they don't have this anymore, at least not that I know of, but they used to have a stockade where they would put their more subversive troops, where they just like, no, this is where you go because you keep trying to fuck things up here. You keep messing with training, you keep subverting the good of the war or whatever. So a lot of those people would end up getting dishonorably discharged. It mattered on the command. It mattered on what was being done. There's a guy that was brought up on charges because he dropped a wrench into an engine and it made the boat not work for 8 months. There's all kinds of different things you get hemmed up on. So this I really liked. I liked that it's kind of my feeling about getting out of the military. Now, I got out with an honorable discharge because I'm a good boy. However, I was also not drafted. Nobody put a gun to my head to sign the paperwork. They said, would you like to do this? We will give you extra money on top of not really having to do much. And I said, yeah, sure. So, couldn't really blame anybody else but myself. So our second reading is The Balance of Payments. I picked this one, and I think that when I read it, you'll see why I picked this one. This one is a little eyebrow raising. But it was published, and maybe it'll work. I don't know. We'll see. So it's as I said, The Balance of Payments, Servicemen's Group Life Insurance. Yes, there is still a legal way in the Army to say, I'm fed up with Vietnam. One step is to change your personnel file, designating as the beneficiary for all service-connected life insurance and death gratuity either a peace or a resistance group. There will undoubtedly be a hassle with your CO and sergeants, but just remember this move is entirely legal, and nothing may be done to you in the way of an Article 15 or court-martial. The ARs plainly state that an insured member may, quote, designate any person, firm, corporation, or legal entity individually as a trustee or as a beneficiary, end quote. Don't let them try to talk you out of it, and they will try. The form to make this change may be obtained in your orderly room. When I changed my beneficiary last fall to the War Resisters League, the entire episode took a total of 9 days and a constant, let me check on it, and are you aware of the consequences? What consequences? That I would rather have the $10,000 that the Army will pay for my life to go to an organization that fights for peace? The only consequence you can expect is the hassle that will evolve from letting your superiors know your true thoughts. I get it. I understand that this is kind of subversive. However, it does is like, hey, what would be really funny? What would piss people off? Is if you gave us your money when you died. That would piss people off so much. And you know what? This person, the fact that they're sending it to a different organization, maybe that's, and not, your mileage may vary. They're not specifically saying, hey, send us the money. But it is an interesting concept that, hey, at least in my death, I want this money to be going to this organization that is fighting against all of this bullshit. So So the final piece is called Bucking the Big Brown River. This is by Richard T. Mueller, and this is the Coastie I was telling you about earlier. So comes from a guy in the Coast Guard. But again, remember, there were people all over in all the branches of service who were like, hey, this is fucked up. We shouldn't be in Vietnam. So, Bucking the Big Brown River. The American GI, whether Army, Air Force, or in the Naval Reserve Services, faces many problems. Some similar, some not. Usually certain things can be said that's true of all services. However, foremost amongst them being they create problems for the occupants and for everybody else for that matter. The problems increase in direct proportion to a man's awareness and his education, and inverse proportion to his rank. In other words, a colonel has less to swallow than a lieutenant, a chief less than a seaman, and the holder of 5 or 6 years of college is more apt to notice the brown tide than his counterpart that dropped out in the 4th grade. Other comparisons are possible. Marines get more brainwashing, for instance, than Coast Guardsmen. As an aside, love that he still had to get a dig in on the Marines. However, the Pentagon flushes downhill, and the Big Brown River flows among captain, corporal, yeoman, gunner, medic, and pilot alike. The usual difference between a 2-3-4 man and a career GI, so that's a person who's doing 2 to 4 years of an initial contract, and then usually when you're drafted, I think it was for a year, maybe 2, but 2-3-4 man, short timers, and a career GI or lifer, is that the latter seems to be devoid of a sense of smell, while we draftees are acutely aware of the presence of the, let's say, military aura. The difference between a career man and a lifer is that the career man is also aware of the flood of extraneous nonsense and triplicated garbage, but ignores it, while plugging gamely on towards his pension. Fuck it, let him go. Both officers and petty officers that I've talked to confess frustration, disgust, and anger at various elements of military training and operations, and the snarled systemics that teach a boot sailor 2 hours of rank hierarchy mumbo-jumbo for every hour of practical seamanship. A few even hate the system quite openly, but stay on for their pension for obscure reasons of their own. I think the pension is enough reason. That's free money for the rest of your life. So, it's if you can keep your head down and do the job for 20 years, boom, you get free money for the rest of your life. One such PO3, Petty Officer 3rd Class, I helped talk into getting out, has since come back in. Apparently being told what to do can become habit forming to the extent that some people can't leave, like this man who violently hates the surface and can't leave. That guy just needs counseling, I'm going to be honest. I knew a guy who got out and then came back in because he did 15 years in the Army and then got out. At the age of 30, it's not easy to start over at the age of 30. It's not easy to be in your 30s and getting a job that one would get when they're 22. So, and he was just like, God, I got to get back into the Army. I need to get a regular paycheck again. And if the career man becomes habituated to the plain lifer, it becomes an addiction. He no longer has, or perhaps never had, the capability to carry on a productive and individual life. The largest group of 3, the draftee, enlisted, one hitcher, and I assume that most of you reading these are draftees, parentheses, or MI, hey feds, thanks for reading, is the one who needs the most help. So it's saying that the people who don't really want to be there or who are there just to, catch a year or two to figure out what the fuck they want to do usually need a lot more help than the people who are going to be the lifers, right? He is the only one who is torn away from his family and home and taught to act incomprehensibly, programmed for the archaic task of murder, and expected to become a robot, smiling at the Brown River, and much beloved by God, country, and the silent majority. Phooey. Fortunately, most of us beat the brain bath by virtue of previous education, involvement, intelligence, or just plain obstinacy and ingrained American individualism, and wander through our short military careers counting the days, developing sarcastic natures and passionate love for civilian clothes and hairstyles, and generally ignoring the whole bloody mess. kind of guilty on that one. I'm guilty of both the lifer and some of these little the the one hitchers, just because I was a reservist, so I didn't have to do Army every day, which was probably what saved me mentally there. On rare happy occasions, a Mort Stahl or a Lenny Bruce may be born, but usually for the draftee enlistee, it's 2 to 4 years of unnatural existence made worse by combat, isolated duty, sea duty, confinement, threats, rootlessness, and the other horrors that are forced upon a man flung into a twisted society, bereft to a great extent of enjoyment, culture, kindness, and freedom. So I went and I had to look up Lenny Bruce and Mort Stahl and see why they specifically were mentioned. Now, both of them are comedians who were very famous in the 1960s. I believe Mort Stahl is considered one of the, basically considered the very first stand-up comedian or modern comedian. And Lenny Bruce was very famous he was famous for doing the what are you offended? Are you offended, Snowflake? But like in the 60s when it was actually subversive and not annoying, like he was really pushing First Amendment stuff. So and Lenny Bruce, and these are pulled directly from Wikipedia. I didn't go too deep into any of this stuff, but I definitely wanted to bring up why Lenny Bruce and Mort Stahl, who they are and why they were being mentioned in something like this. So Lenny Bruce, after spending time working on a farm, Bruce joined the United States Navy at the age of 16 in 1942. With active service during World War II against the USS Brooklyn in northern Africa, Palmero in 1943, and Anzio, Italy. Probably saying that wrong, but whatever, Anzio, Italy. In May of 1945, after a comedic performance for his shipmates in which he was dressed in drag, his commanding officers became upset. He defiantly convinced the ship medical officer that he was experiencing homosexual urges, leading to his dishonorable discharge in 1945. However, he had not admitted to or been found of guilty of any naval breach of naval regulations, and successfully applied to have his discharge changed to under honorable conditions by reason of unsuitability for naval service. So he joined and saw a lot of combat, and then pissed off the wrong guys, and then finally said, "Fuck it, I want to get out of here." For Mort Stahl, when the U.S. entered World War II after the Japanese strike on Pearl Harbor, Stahl, then aged 14, joined the school's Reserve Officer Training Course. He won a medal for marksmanship and an American Legion Americanism Award. He wanted to express his patriotism, so he wore his ROTC uniform to school and in public. And when he turned 15, he dropped out of high school to join the Army by lying about his age. His mother tracked him down and brought him home 2 weeks later after she had revealed his true age. So you could get in at 16, but 15, that's a child soldier. We can't do any of that. After Stahl graduated from high school, his father tried to get him into West Point. And he did get some help from a congressman, but Stahl, being a motherfucker, said no and joined the Army, the Air Forces, and enlisted rather than going off to West Point. He was later stationed in Alaska with the 93rd Air Depot Group. In the military, however, he resisted the discipline and authoritarian control it exerted over his life. He expressed his nonconformity by growing a beard and refusing to wear a cap as required. He also wrote articles for a small newspaper criticizing the military that resulted in him being penalized with 3 months of KP duty. In an interview, Stahl said that he found his military experience a good one that he described as spiritual. So that's Lenny Bruce and Mort Stahl. As I said, two people who considered very, very early basic comedians and very subversive at the time, and who were, wanted to be in, and then, you want to jump in and go do Army stuff, and then somebody makes you do like actual Army stuff, like march and clean your boots and shit. And it's like, wait a minute, I joined to do all the outside stuff, not all the inside stuff. Well, guess what? So getting back to it, twisted society bereft of enjoyment, culture, kindness, and freedom. I don't know about the military back then. Maybe. I would say that we have a shitload of culture. Take a look at anybody who sells military racist coffee. Obviously, we have a need to be fulfilled here, and I think the answer lies in an unofficial corps of commissars. Not the type of commissars found in the Soviet services to indoctrinate men along the guidelines of the state. Those we already have. Ours should be along the lines of the commissars that fought with the international brigades of English, Scots, American, French, and others who fought on the side of the Republican Spain of the Civil War of 1936-39. Men like Jack Cunningham, Steve Nelson, and Milton Wolfe, who served as in-formation political, education, and morale officers, as well as chaplains to their comrades, representing them to their offices and acting as a link between staff and line. The best account of these activities can be found in Landis's The Abraham Lincoln Brigade and Hugh Thomas's The Spanish Civil War. We need a variation of this here, particularly on units that are separated from coffee houses and universities. So the bases that are kind of far-flung and can't hang out with all the cute hippie girls who don't shave their armpits and smell like patchouli and just have really pretty eyes, so you can go marry them at the age of 19. They don't have those when you're in Fort Leonard Wood, because there ain't shit around Fort Leonard Wood. Even in 2023, there ain't shit around Fort Leonard Wood. There's Uranus, Missouri. There's a small shopping strip mall that has been built around being a Route 66 destination spot built around a butt joke. That's what you got. So, you don't have these things in these far-flung places. Continuing, I'm on isolated duty with the Coast Guard, and I am performing to the best of my ability this function for the 10 to 20 men normally stationed aboard our unit at any given time. I distribute literature and books, both political and fiction, keep a library of leftist literature, maintain a tape recorder stocked with tapes of the Beatles, the Stones, Simon and Garfunkel, and Bob Dylan, as well as Pete Seeger, Phil Ochs, and Lenny Bruce. I assume those other ones are comedians. As somebody who grew up listening to oldies, and when I was a teenager, I was an idiot, like all teenagers are. Listening to Rage Against the Machine at 15, you're like, fuck yeah, this slaps. And then listening to it at 35, you're like, fuck yeah, it slaps. I never really Simon and Garfunkel or the Beatles or the Stones. But yeah, I mean, they kind of were about, even if they weren't explicitly singing songs about the war, though in some situations, sometimes they were at least promoting this kind of open and free and easy and let's all love each other and be in a big cuddle party kind of thing, which the Army's against, turns out. So I am a universal life church minister with a good grounding in philosophy and religion, so I can give counsel if somebody asks for it. You've heard of a barracks lawyer. Here's the fucking barracks chaplain and barracks annoying philosophy guy who's going to recite Kant. I have a BA. I was teaching high school English when I was drafted, and I help out with USAFI courses and private study. I'm lucky since most of the men here are political and ecologically aware. Besides the usual Life, Time, and Sports Illustrated subscriptions, we now get your Military Left, Link, the Berkeley Tribe, the Chicago Seed, and the Village Voice. All alt weeklies, not all of them necessarily based around the military. These aren't all zines, but there were always these kind of alt weeklies that were popping up in cities to kind of counter the corporate shit that even today in 2023 we're irritated by. The general attitude is one of healthy irreverence to the Big Brown River, and our People's Committee not only gets the guards' work done, but we manage to keep each other from going crazy. And on a unit where the male only comes once every 2 weeks, that is no mean feat. Lastly, we're blessed by an intelligent, understanding CO who gives us no static about our private lives so long as we do our ship's work. Solid. I'm going to tell you that CO also does not give a shit and just is got his heads down and is just powering through. And God bless him. More commanding officers should be like that. We have things stacked in our favor, so we flourish. I only wish it could be that easy on all units, but geography, poor COs, bad duty, excess indoctrination, super patriots, apathy, gung-ho nom-coms, and other reasons get in the way. However, the Commissar program could help GIs who are lonely, frustrated, angry, and bitter to have a better time of it. Sort of like a one-man left-wing USO where guys of our similar interests could get together and rap and keep our heads together. Hey, that's called podcasting now. And where one man couldn't handle everything, Commissar boards could be set up of 2 or 3. You suffer less if you don't have to suffer alone. It's easier to buck the Big Brown River if you don't have to do it by yourself. I would be interested in hearing from other GIs who are doing similar work, as I consider it vital. I totally understand. Like again, I only experienced military culture in the 2000s. This is military culture during a very unpopular war in the 1960s that was affecting people. Like I understand Afghanistan, also very unpopular war. However, it was not as bad as Vietnam. You know, we didn't lose 50,000 American soldiers in in the span of a couple of years. It was a very deadly and violent war that still is impacting both Vietnam and Laos and Cambodia and Americans that were there, in multiple ways today, and will probably for generations to come. So I definitely understand that things are probably a little bit different in the culture of the military at the time. And I think this is a great idea. You got to have somebody, and it's cool that this guy has kind of a small group, and maybe they're all like cool with it because they were all smart enough to join the Coast Guard during Vietnam. So it's like, fuck this Marine infantry bullshit. I'm gonna go tool around on a boat somewhere out in the middle of nowhere. Now, I say that, but we also send a lot of Coast Guard cutters to the Middle East because the Navy doesn't have any ships that can deal with shallow shallow areas. So in today's world, you're not going to get out of it as easily. But at least the coasties back then probably didn't have as much combat rotations as anybody else did. So I like it. I don't know about going to this guy to talk about your problems, but I do know that when you are the only person when you feel like you're the only person that thinks the way you do, especially in the military, like that is very hard in the military because a lot of times you are surrounded by very loud conservative people. And I know that like a lot of the polling and everything shows that the military really does sway Democrat, honestly, like especially the enlisted people, sways kind of Democrat. The loud ones are usually Republicans. Like nobody's loudly exclaiming their love for Joe Biden. One, there's nothing really to get excited about. But even if you are like a turbo lib and you want to and you love Joe Biden, you love Kamala Harris, generally you're not as loud and obnoxious about it as most people that I've heard that talk glowingly about Donald Trump when I was in. So, this is a an interesting idea, probably a good idea at the time. You're probably not going to need it now. Most chaplains are fairly normal. Most and normal, doing a lot of heavy carrying there. If you are in the military and you're finding that you can't deal with it, start your movement to get out. Talk to a chaplain. Talk to mental health, and get yourself out. Don't talk to the weird guy in the barracks who has like the little green book or something in his wall locker. As Tom would say, it all comes back to Gaddafi, and at some point there could be I have to look up when Gaddafi's little green book came out, but don't go to the guy who's got like a weird library and is giving you a Simon and Garfunkel tape. That kid's he just needs to get out, and he'll go off and be a perfectly normal human being later, maybe. Okay, no, we're not joining. We're not joining the discourse. Not doing the atomic discourse. Don't worry. I have Mr. Cillian Murphy Oppenheimer up because currently I'm running a Oppenheimer sale in the store. So everything nuke related, all the Raycat stuff, the patches, the pins, and anything Soviet related, both the recreation of the master hemp grower and Soviet pins, whoop, right there, on sale, $8. You get a blind bag of four of them. I love these things. I have a huge collection of them now. Basically, this just funds me obsessively collecting them, and then I sell all the old ones, the other ones to you guys. So that's on sale. All that's on sale. You can get all of that at hellofwaytodie.com/sale.